So greetings and merry meet. Would you like to learn a secret that elevates your leadership and impacts your work, your life, your community, the organizations that you participate in? Well, today's guest has a collection of 10 principles that will expand your leadership, and you are not going to want to miss hearing about her ideas in her book. I am Dr. Kathryn Bingham, founder of LeadUP, serving executives, entrepreneurs, and professionals to elevate leadership and achieve dreams through strategic redesign or pivots so that you can change your life, change your work, and change the world. And I'm also the author of Driving Pink. That today I'm very excited to introduce our guest as one of my favorite individuals in the field of leadership, Dr. Juana Bordas, president of Mestiza Leadership International. Since Dr. Bordas's arrival in a banana boat from Nicaragua at age 3, she's exemplified the many contributions, resiliency, and determination of immigrant spirit. Her leadership is recognized across sectors, in government, nonprofit, corporate, and academic environments, as evidenced by pages of achievements and awards, including her 2019 Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Leadership Association. What makes me smile about that is that Dr. Bordas seems nowhere near done sharing her leadership insight, her energy, and her inspiration. So today we're focusing on her newly released update to the Power of Latino Leadership, Culture, Inclusion, and Contribution. Juana, bienvenido.
Hey,
did I do that right? Welcome.
Yes, you did. And I have to say that bienvenido is not just welcome. It's a Latino mainstay, that we have a very inclusive, open, and mixed culture, and we invite you to celebrate it with us.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before we get into some of the principles and the stories from the book, could you share a bit about your own life, highlighting a pivotal moment or two from your journey?
Wow. Well, I have a long life.
I know. That's why we maybe have to take a moment or two.
Well, I think my immigrant experience, when I was growing up in the 40s and 50s, of course, it's hard. My family was poor. We were immigrants. We were Hispanic. I was a woman, which in the 40s and 50s was a difficult thing in schools and so forth. And yet when I look back today and I look at that experience, and I encourage everybody to do that with their childhood, especially if you think you had a childhood trauma, let's get into healing that and see what is it we learned. Leaders are lifelong learners. Mm-hmm. So let's look. So when I look back on my life now, and I see the stamina, the vision, the fortitude, the sacrifice of my parents, particularly my mother, who washed dishes and scrubbed floors so I could get an education. Now I think I come from greatness. I mean, if my mother could do what she could do with a 5th grade education, coming here in her 40s and giving up everything in order to have a better life for her children, then there's no obstacle that I feel is too great, Mm-hmm. So I was privileged to be the first in my whole ancestry to be able to get a college education. And when I entered the University of Florida, I never met another Latino. I never met another Latina. And when I was 19, I marched with a group of it was all Anglos, by the way, to integrate the University of Florida. And that was my first activist act, if you want to call it that. It was the first time I stood up and did what was right. And then my senior year, 2 African Americans came to the university. And so when I think about my life, and I think about what's happened today, the University of Florida is a Hispanic serving organization. It means 25% of their students are Latinos. And I had the honor a few years ago being asked to come and address the freshman class of Latinos, 1,500.
Wow.
So when you ask me what's so great about my life is that I've been able to see women, Latinos, people of color. I've been able to see civil rights. I've been able to see some of these changes. and that I have been part of that. You know, when I came back, I joined the Peace Corps after the university experience. And then I came back and started working with women and starting women's centers and then women's leadership programs. So my life has been a wonderful path of service, a journey of, I guess, inclusion and community, and giving back, because I was given so much, not just by my family, but by the United States of America, the opportunities that are here.
And, you know, I love that you have this arc, because I think the stories, when we hear the stories of how we learn and grow in our leadership and how we understand culture, just like we talked a little bit before we started about participating in the Peace Corps. These are experiences that not everybody has. And what I love about your book is it is just filled with the stories and experiences, not only your own, but those of other people, so that it expands all of our view of what leadership can be. Your frame is Latino leadership, but it really is much greater. And I'm going to touch on that right now in terms of, you mentioned the women's programs and things that you were working on. We have seen this growing shift from the hierarchical command and control to the more collective, collaborative leadership, in part because of the advancement of women's leadership. Taking that broader view of who is a stakeholder and who participates or leads mirrors the principles, right, and the approaches of the Latino leadership that you're describing in the book. Help our audience understand why this is important and why it's so important ahora, now.
Ahora. Well, first of all, you know, the word Latina means I'm a woman and Hispanic. And there is a lot of synchronicity between women's leadership and Latino leadership, or leadership in communities of color, because my first book was about leadership in Black, Latino, and American Indian communities. Mm-hmm. And what you want to look at, particularly for the Latino community, is we are a matriarchal culture. I always like to say my father wore the pants in the family, but my mother told him which ones to wear. In Spanish, she would say, "Ponte eso, papi," you know. And so we come from that tradition of very strong women. I mean, my mother was a woman of steel, and it's because of their vision and determination. And I'm not minimizing the role that men have played, because the Latino culture, unlike the idea of machismo, the real machismo is the man who protects. Like the American Indian warrior, they were there to protect the people, to make sure that people were safe, to provide, right? But our women have been so strong. And so when you look at our culture, it's very much, like I say, Latino leadership is people-centered, community-based.
Yep.
What we're talking about with Latino leadership is how do we collectively come together, and that's how we've advanced for 500 years. How do we come together and work together for the benefit of those that come after us? So and women have that same thing. You know, for women, it was their children, it was their families, the communities, the schools, the churches, the nonprofits. And so women have that same collective mentality, because we are those that bring forth life and children. And so the synchronicity between women's leadership and Latino leadership. And then when you add the fact that Latino women are so strong, you really have a real engine there to drive and to uplift the women's movement. We got the vote 100 years ago. We ain't over yet, but we are making progress, and paradigm shifts take that long. So I really am inspired that maybe women and people of color and Latinos and young people in particular can work together to kind of bring a more holistic, humanistic society, because I think we've lost our way in a lot of in America today.
I think, yes, I think there's so much polarization and there's so much disconnect between the opportunities that we have available for change making and just putting our head down and doing life. But you have one of the things right off the bat, you have an introduction to 10 Latino leadership principles. And what I love is that you've made it super easy right at the beginning of the book, that there's a chart so that it frames the rest, because it's really telling, here's the chapters you're going to see, but they all tie to this way, this method, this approach to leadership that is inherent in the Latino community, which is also very multicultural, inclusive, accepting. Did you say 27 countries? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, we come from 28 countries. Yeah.
28 countries. Right.
Yeah.
And so
well, we have 20 right in this hemisphere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So highlight a couple of the principles from the book and how we benefit from this idea of embracing and learning from the unique cultural diversity of the Latino community.
Well, let me start with the chapter, which is a new chapter called El Círculo, the circle,
yes,
about intergenerational leadership, because that chart that you picked up, that's because a millennial reader read my book. And she said, oh, no, I have to have a chart so I can pick what I want to read, so I can pick and choose. And I'm like, I got to do a chart now. But they're right. They're right. And I'm on TikTok now because I want to reach the younger generation. People need to realize that in 13 years, millennials and Zs will make up half the electorate. Mm-hmm. So we need to be today. And let me give you an example from my life, is that when I was 19, I saw John F. Kennedy. That's why I joined the Peace Corps, by the way. He was so inspiring. And he said, let the time go forth from this time and place, that the torch is being passed to a new generation of leaders. And that was us, the boomers. Mm-hmm. And we rose to the occasion. Well, the same thing's happening today. 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. And I'm begging them, don't retire. Work with us to help our young people, because today they need our help. You know, they need to look at the climate crisis, the gun violence crisis, you know, the crisis in debt that they have. So intergenerational leadership, and of course I interview leaders, and leaders are looking at the future, and they're looking at how do we create a better society. They call themselves change makers, the word you just used. And you know, a change maker, according to the definition, is different than a social activist or a community organizer, because change makers believe they're going to create the change. And young people have to have that kind of esperanza, or hope, that they can build a better future. So what they teach us, first of all, I want to say, is that they're digital activists. When the Dreamers, the DACA students, began to organize to, these are children that were brought to this country that are here to make a contribution, who are bright and ready, you know, for their futures. They first of all said, we are all dreamers, which is what we need to realize. What other people, you know, it impacts us all. But they had 5 million people a month on their websites. When they did the climate change march, 150 countries. When they did the women's march, it was across the world. Mm-hmm. So these young people are not only change makers, but they have a worldview, and they understand, you know, the leaders among them understand that they have to get engaged today in order to deal with some of the issues, particularly, for example, that today more young people die from gun violence than any other, and we should solve that problem. No, we should solve that problem. So they're change makers, they're digital activists. They believe in intersectionality, that you can be many things. You can be authentic, but it's about your race, your culture, your ethnicity, your gender preferences, and all of that. So they have a very broad spectrum. And they also believe that we need to get to know each other, like we're doing now, that we come from so many different places, and people move all the time, and none of us really live where we were born, and yet a generation ago we would have known each other's grandparents. So right. One of the calls to leadership that young people are asking us to do is to recreate the fabric of community by telling our stories, and by working together, and by having a common vision of the future. So I'm very excited about the young people that are coming. The last election, the Latino community elected 12 new Congress people, the majority of which are Millennials and Zs. We have Maxwell Frost is the first Z, and his issue is gun violence. So I think that chapter is real important because, we cannot retire. People say to me, Juana, are you going to retire? And I go, you ain't seen nothing yet. So that's one principle, intergenerational leadership. The book begins with 3 principles of how do you prepare for leadership. Mm-hmm. And the first one is called personalismo. What kind of a person are you? And, these are things that have been written about. Leadership is about preparing yourself. I mean, even Robert Greenleaf in The Servant as Leader said, we are called to leadership so we can heal ourselves. Leadership is a path to development. If you do it right, how can I become better and how can I make other people reach their potential? So personalismo really invites you to take a good look at who you are and how you treat other people. Because in the Latino community, it's not about your position or wealth or anything like that. Do you contribute to others? And that's our measuring stick. And then there's a thing called conciencia, or developing personal awareness. So you understand why you do what you do. And the third one, which I really invite people to participate in, is called destino, or what is your destiny? Like me, being the youngest daughter in an immigrant family of 8 allowed me to become educated. And that has driven with me because my family poured themselves into me. One of my sisters sewed my clothes, another one took care of medical issues for me and bought our family a car so we could get places and things like that. Because I am responsible to that community is why I'm so driven to now help others and play it forward. So those 3 principles are really exciting. Shall I keep going or shall we chat?
Well, it's awesome because I have 2 of those 3 that are going to be coming up and teed up in a question that I have for you. So I totally love it. But I think some of the other things that I read, just generically without the principle attached, is this idea that everyone is a leader. Like we all participate collectively in the leadership, the community, the communication. We bring our gifts and talents together, and we share in creating and co-creating what's to come next, right? There's also respect and equity and salsa because,
Yeah, I'm probably the only one that has gozar la vida, or celebrate life, as a leadership principle, but I
love that. And it's in my notes.
Yeah, one of the ways, now think about this, because our early leaders, my mother and father, those that came before them, we had to inspire them to work for a goal they would never see in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. It had to be that leadership thing of the future. I'm preparing for the future. I'm preparing for the next generation. I'm preparing to leave a legacy. And they had very hard lives. 47% of Latinos still make under $15 an hour. And so here you're asking a group of people, leadership in communities of color and Latino leaders, to work hard for a goal they will never see under dire circumstances. The only way they could do it was collectively. Mm-hmm. The only way they could do it was to work together. And the only way they could do it was to respect and admire each person's contribution. So I call that the leader is equal. And why it's so important. We were talking about women's leadership, and what we're really talking about in diversity is dismantling hierarchy. Mm-hmm. It's coming to a more lateral type of leadership where everybody is invited to the table. And whether the person is cleaning the place and keeping it nice, or doing your IT work, or marketing, or making sure you get paid because they're in the finance department, or keeping track of the books, everybody has a role to play. And so the real leader respects everybody. And I have to tell you that the leaders I interviewed, like Mayor Federico Pena of Denver, one of the great mayors of the last century, he said, even when he walks into the city and county building today, people go like, hey, I got promoted because you thought I was a leader. That's see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they were maintenance people who got promoted because he thought they were a leader. So showing that respect and honesty, respect and trust, and being a leader for everyone creates what I call leadership by the many. And that is a force of leadership where everybody in your organization or everybody in your community or the group that you're working with is part of the leadership process. And then you get the force for change or the numbers that you need in order to create an environment of leadership.
I absolutely agree with that. In fact, the reason I pursued a doctorate and the research that I did was because I saw in the corporate world, we were spending, out across the United States, 14-15 billion dollars to develop leaders. But as they did that in companies, I would see over and over and over again, it's this select few that gets that leadership training. I'm like, how do we create leadership development for everyone? Everyone is a leader. Everyone should have the opportunity to learn and grow. And you speak to that, you write to that in that chapter on conciencia, right? It's that knowing ourselves and defining or redefining our identities. You wrote, and I love that it was paired together. I almost would have pulled it and put it in two places, but you tell the story of the red dress, the red and brown striped
Right.
dress.
That's such a beautiful story.
It is.
I think what people need to realize when you look at strength, and I do want to put this call out there. I'm waiting for some, and I want it with all due respect, because like I said, it was Anglo writers and leaders who have encouraged me, and I've had so many mentors that have been white males. But I'm really waiting for some white males to come up and ask me and say, Juana, how did they do it? How did people of color, how did Latinos with all of these challenges? I walked into a school and couldn't speak the language.
Yes.
I mean, you have to understand that our people have overcome such barriers in order to be where we are, that as you do the conciencia, as you do your reflection as to who I am, as you do your healing, you recognize the strengths that those experiences gave you. And so so there's healing that needs to take place on both sides. People of color, to me, it's like, how do we transform our experiences so that we understand, as African Americans say, if it didn't kill you, it'll make you stronger.
Yes.
So the red dress, I was so excited. I was a teenager, and you know how teenagers are. We're so self-absorbed in it, and so I got invited to this fancy party. And my mother, Maria, I still don't know how she would get the resources to do this. Took me to Learners. I don't know if anybody remembers Learners, It might be like Ross's today. I don't know. But, and I thought I was going to Saks Fifth Avenue, right, to buy a dress for this event. And so we looked around, and I found this, it was polished cotton. I don't know if the ladies remember that, but it kind of has shine to it. And it was this little striped dress with a little bow tie. And we thought it was beautiful. I write in my book that I tap danced around the store. And so I get all dressed up for this party, and my parents leave me off, and I walk in, and I was the only minority person there, because when we bought our little house, we could only afford it we couldn't, it was a white part of town. So I actually had to assimilate when I was very, very young. I had to learn the white system. And so I walk in, and all these wealthy girls are in taffetas and silk, and I was mortified. And so I went and hid in the bathroom, because I was just so embarrassed about how I dressed. And that's how I grew up. I was embarrassed that my mother had this thick accent, that we didn't have the right clothes, that we didn't, live in the right part of town. I had to take a bus to the high school I went to. And so there I was, and what I say in the book is that it was about that time that I saw this cartoon, and it had this owl.
That was what I was going to pair it with. Yeah, I love
the owl is standing on the tree, and he's singing, "It's not what you got, it's what you do with what you got. It's not what you got, it's what you do with what you got." And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, you know what? I am going to make it. I'm going to take all the gifts that I have, and I'm going to make it. And I became a leader in high school. But later, when I read about poverty and what it does to people, and what exclusion and marginalization does, I began to read how other kids would hide in the bathroom when they didn't have money for lunch, or how they wouldn't show up at school if it was a special event where they had to dress up. And so a lot of times people don't understand that that being marginalized does affect our children.
Mhm.
And we lose the potential. And people say to me, oh, well, you've done this. I go like, yeah, but think of all the other Juanas that didn't make it out of the barrio. What have we lost?
It was that the joy. I mean, this just came through. And I think everybody needs to read this book. This is not a Power of Latino Leadership for Latino individuals to learn how to grow their leadership. This is a book for all of us to read so that we all learn from what's in here. But it was the joy that you just shared. I found the dress. It was beautiful. It made me feel good. And then the contrast and the comparison and the how badly it made you feel about yourself. And yet you were that same child. And how do we help our children not have that experience? Or if they do, help them get to the singing owl experience so that they can take away, I am enough.
Wow, but I have to tell you that when I get through working, because one of my dearest constituency are college students, and particularly students of color. And when I get through talking to them, I have them embrace the fact that we come from greatness. This is greatness. What has happened with communities of color, what has happened with the African slaves and the colonized Mexicans in Texas, and women who, women were property.
Yes.
So
yes.
What we have been through, not only will it make us stronger, but I think we have to realize that our source of our greatness, our compassion, our ability to care for others, our vision of a world where children do not have to, where children can be acknowledged for who they are. That's what drives all of us today to try to create a better future. And so we have to do those kinds of transformations in order to be the leaders we are called to be.
Absolutely. I took a picture. Nobody will be able to see the picture, but I'll just show you so that you get a sense. Wow. So basically what it is, I did the Cooper River Bridge Run on the 1st of April. And these two ladies were just in front of me at the finish line, and their t-shirts say, to the person behind me, you are amazing, beautiful, and enough.
Isn't that a mantra for leadership?
Isn't that fabulous? And I'm like, you have to stop and they said, oh, do you want me to take, they wanted to know if they could take my picture. I'm like, no. I need you to turn around so I could take the t-shirt picture. Because to me, that is such an important message. And I think that was part of the story that I took away when I read about your dress, is that we need to make sure that these messages get out to our children, to our communities, so that no matter where a woman is, a boy is, a child is, they get that message that they are enough, they're powerful, they have skills, they have talents, they have things to contribute, and we value them.
Yeah, right? Well, but it is the highest purpose of leadership to leave a legacy. Because no matter how powerful you are, and I have had some of my incredible mentors pass on, and it's the legacy that they left that makes them great. Because an individual will only accomplish so much, and believe it or not, the sands of time will wipe that away. But I always say Latino leadership is like a relay race where one generation passes the torch to the next and the next and the next and the next. And when I say that we are at a crisis today, it's because I think we've lost that sense of legacy. I think we're not talking about the future. Our young people are facing climate change. They're facing gun violence. They're facing college debt. They're facing even a life expectancy that's lower. And yet I'm saying to our generation, the boomers and the generations that come after us, let us work together to create this future for our children, because that's how we got here. Human beings made it to the top of the evolutionary pile because we worked together and we worked for the future and the next generation and the next. And we have to re-embrace that. It's a critical time in our country and in the world.
And I believe in the power of pivoting and living our dreams and our mission, our destino, right?
Yes.
Today, not someday. I don't want to wait. I want to understand what it is that's important for me to do and how I want to live my life. And I want to do that today, not someday in the future. But I recognize I'm doing those things because I want that better future, not just for myself, but for others.
I'd like to do a pivot here if it's okay.
Sure.
Because I want to talk a little dollars and cents for folks that are going like, well, I'm not really involved in the society. I mean, but I want them to think of this. 78% of the new entries into the labor market in the next 10 years will be Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
Latinos today have the highest participation of any group in the labor market, and young people today are now going to be making up half of our workers. So whether you're into this or not, you got to realize that your future company, whatever's going to happen is going to be dependent on women, people of color, and the younger generation.
Absolutely.
Latinos, for example, are a $1.8 trillion market. Our GNP is larger than Canada. We are a market you need to go after, or according to Nielsen reports, you won't have a company in the future.
That's right.
Latinos started 80% of small businesses in the last decade. We have an entrepreneurial, risk-taking, can-do spirit that we bring to corporations, that we bring to organizations, because we've always had to do more with less.
Yes.
We've always had to be resourceful. So, this is not just a book for people that want social change, although I would hope that we all know that the purpose of leadership is to create a society that takes care of its people.
Yes.
But the future economic viability of this country, Latinos are the economic engine that will drive this century.
And I think that visibility is just even understanding the data and how the demographics are shifting and the value. I mean, you mentioned our young people do not see they see themselves as multicultural. They identify as more than one thing.
Half of the kids under 18.
Yeah.
It's already here. It's already here. Do you want to be part of the future? That's the question to ask leaders. Do you want to be part of the future?
Yes, that is exactly right. That is
the other thing I was going to say, because we were talking about the changes in the market, and that is that 60% of Latinos are millennials or younger. So there's also that demographic change is going to continue as we move into the next century. And, people go like, oh, is this going to scare people? Well, let me just tell you that Latinos have a bienvenido spirit.
Yes.
That we're a culture. We're not a race. We're an ethnic group like the Jewish people. So you can be Jewish and be from Poland or Spain, or you can be from Cleveland or Nevada. So you can be Latino from any country. And it's our values and our language and our history that kind of unite us. But because we are mixed people, 35% of Latinos already claim that they're mixed. A fourth of us claim we're Afro-Latino. A fourth of us claim that we have indigenous blood, and 42% say, yeah, we have European ancestries. We're Spanish, and I'm also French. My father was French Nicaraguan. How sexy is that?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So we invite people to join with us. So this is not an exclusion journey. This is an inclusion journey. This is all of our children. And by the way, your children and grandchildren will be mixed.
Yes. Yes.
They love it.
And who wouldn't love it? Okay, I mean, right? You mentioned it earlier. It's is it Gozar
la vida, enjoy life.
Okay. That whole element of bringing salsa, fiesta, bringing just collective celebration into everything we do. Yes, it also encourages participation. It nurtures people when they're doing hard work. There's a lot of reasons to do that, but there is also this this element that helps us to build community and resilience when we are in this space of celebration as we go about creating change and developing leadership and doing whatever the work happens to be.
It's actually an incredible leadership strategy.
Yes.
To enjoy the process and to create communal memories. Latinos not only work hard, we just talked about that, but we play hard. We spend more money on entertainment and going out to eat. But a fiesta, I make a joke in my book that when I have a party, and I'm having my annual Easter party, 35 years if you're in Denver, I have more food at the end of the party than at the beginning. It's the tradition of the potluck. Everybody brings something. Everybody celebrates. We have music. And I'm also going to encourage people to dance. I was the first Latina faculty member at the Center for Creative Leadership, and I use music in all of my programs. And I taught corporate men how to do the cumbia, and they were having so much fun because learning really is about integrating mind, body, and spirit. And so I would encourage everybody to just get yourself moving and get a little salsa in your life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Before we close out, I always ask the audience, and it's not a live audience, but the fact is, if people have made it this far, I love to ask them a question. So one of the things that I'd like folks, if you are listening, tell us what you think your destino is, right? Share your passion, share something that you believe is important for you to do. And I read everybody's comment and respond to them. Juana, while they're doing that, could you tell us, what is something, because your life is out there and you've been here for a long time, you've written multiple books, and you've been participating in so many ways in the leadership community, but what is one thing that somebody's not going to know about you if they look at your social media or they've read your books? What do they not know?
Oh, yeah, that's such a beautiful question. I have to say that part of my destino has been going on what American Indians called a vision quest. It's the same concept. Your life has a vision. You have a pattern, and your fingerprints are unique. Everything's unique. And so I thought, this is me in my 30s. And so I was running Mi Casa Women's Center. I was already a woman's leader. And I thought to myself, well, what is it? What is the life pattern? What do I need to do? So being who I am, I went with a friend who was going down to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So if anybody's been to Santa Fe, it's called the Holy City, right? So I go out into the woods, and I'm looking at the sacred Blue Mountain that the Hopis believe they came from. And Vision Quest usually, of course, used to be like 3 days and fasting and everything. So I say to the Great Spirit, I don't have much time. And I'm walking around, right? And I find this rock that my friend I was with was an Indian trader. And he told me it was an old thing that Indian women used to use to grind corn. And then I found an arrow that was broken. The circle between men and women had been broken. And because we used to be partners. And so then I said to the Great Spirit, what does this mean? And the message I got was to teach the old ways. You see, we made it here because of our love for one another, because of our love for our children, because of our belief that human beings had something unique to contribute to this world and to this universe. And we have to embrace the past. We have to move and work in the present, but we have to have that vision of the future to which we are leading. And so I never understood what that meant until I started writing, and my books begin with history. They begin with, think about, since we've been talking a lot about women, think about what women did to bring human beings to where we are today. So that's something people don't know about me. And it took me a long time to figure it out. So if your destino isn't like totally clear to you, your destino is organic. It will keep growing as you grow, as you serve, as you step into your power.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
Well, I want to thank people. I want to thank them for caring about leadership, for caring about the future. I want to thank the women that are with us today, that they might be inspired, because it is a time that we have to kind of buckle up, right? We have to buckle up. And to remember that the greatest gift of leadership is both legacy and serving others.
Very powerful, very powerful. So thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to listen to the conversation that Juana and I have had today. Please subscribe to the channel so that you know when the next awesome video hits the feed, as well as it gives you that opportunity to learn and grow your leadership and live for today, not someday. The Power of Latino Leadership is available on Amazon and some other locations. We're going to add a link in the video description so you'll be able to get at that. Here are a few ways for you to reach out and connect with Juana. The website is Juana Bordas, JuanaBordas.com. She's on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And she has a YouTube channel. And so all of those plus the book link will be in the description so that you have the ability to connect in and follow up on any of the takeaways that you've had from our LeadUP conversation today. So with one more thank you, I just want to encourage you to go forth and do great things. Thank you so much.